Fantastic. Okay, it looks like we are live. Oh, I'll just let people join for a couple of moments. See the participant numbers ticking up. Excellent. Okay, so welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for what is the first in an ongoing series of webinars that we're going to hold from Challenging Procurement. Today, the focus is on innovation procurement as conducted globally. And I just wanted to let everyone know that this session is being recorded. If they have any issue with any issues with Zoom and they drop out, we're also live streaming on YouTube, so there are alternative options. If we go to the next slide. So I am Oliver Kirsch. I work in the strategic analysis team at the Connected Places Catapult. And for those of you that don't know Connected Places Catapult, we're part of the Catapult network of innovation centres in the UK, focused on supporting the growth of innovative businesses across smart cities and mobility. If we go to the next slide. So, as I said, this webinar relates to a relatively new programme for CPC, which is our Challenging Procurement programme. This programme is all about unlocking the potential of public procurement to deliver innovative products and services and providing a better path for innovators to enter the supply chain. Those of you who attended the Pan-EU Innovation Procurement Benchmarking Study last Monday, would have seen that they suggested that, for example, competitive economies spend around 20% of all of their public procurement on innovation. So there's quite a good distance for us to improve, I think, as a community. And part of our aim is to share best practice. This webinar forms part of that, and there'll be more. We'll be looking to involve very specifically SMEs in the discussion as we progress. And I guess I would just say that this is not the first thing that CPC has put out to discuss this topic. We have a Medium blog site, which has a lot of very informative discussion pieces on there. And I'd recommend definitely having a quick read of those. We put out a report earlier in the year. We held another webinar in about May and put out a report on the radical innovation for places, which is worth a read. And later in the summer, we also put out a report with the FCO in Brazil on innovation through public procurement and the experiences of the UK and how those might map across elsewhere. I've included those in the slides, and those will be available to you in the future. If we go to the next slide. So the agenda for today is that we have three very interesting speakers to come, and we'll give them each 10 minutes just to talk about their overall experiences, what it is that each country is doing. So we have a speaker from the UK, a speaker from Brazil, and a speaker from Finland, each talking about their leading practice. And then we're going to move into the rest of the session as discussion, so questions from you, the audience. So if I can ask you, if you have questions as we go along, to submit them through the Q&A button at the bottom of your window. If you have a question for a specific panel member, could I ask that you include that in your written response, and then I'll paraphrase those and share the discussion. Before we get into our speakers, I want to do a very quick poll. Gail, if you're able to pop that up, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what role you take in your organization. So there's three questions here. Okay, I can see those starting to come through now. Perfect. Interesting. So it looks like we have about 2/3 of people are new to CPC events.
I lost him, but hold on.
Sorry? Okay, the poll's closed. So we have about 2/3 of people who are new to CPC events, which is great to see, and I welcome you and hope that this is interesting. And as I say, we'll be holding these types of events on a roughly monthly basis. So I hope that this is interesting and you'll be interested in hearing more. The largest single group of attendees is from SMEs, which is great to see. As I said, we have a particular interest, and part of the Catapult's mission is reaching out to you guys and seeing what we can do to facilitate. And then we kind of have a reasonably even mix of people who work specifically in procurement as suppliers versus kind of organizational management. So that's interesting to see. Thank you. So I guess we'll move into the discussions now. So if we start with André Rauen, who is the Director of Innovation Studies at the Brazilian Institute for Applied Economic Research. Move to the next slide. And
hello, everyone. Hello. Hi, my name is André Rauen. Thank you, dear Oliver, Sala, Kevin, and the web audience. Good morning for those that are in Brazil, and good afternoon for those that are in UK and in Europe. Currently, I am Director of Innovation Studies at the IPEA. IPEA is the Brazilian Institute of Applied Economic Research. IPEA is a think tank connected to the Ministry of Economy in Brazil. And we are responsible for many kinds of applied economic research, from infrastructure to innovation, passing through macroeconomics, social issues, and so on. My directorate has more than 2 decades of innovation policy studies. We was part of the board that made the new Brazilian innovation law, and we are in the middle of this debate about innovation policy since, I don't know, the 90s. Okay, I must say that this is a huge pleasure. I went to a Catapult when I was in London in 2016. I was amazed by the idea, by the engineering of the process, and it's a huge pleasure to be here sharing and receiving some knowledge about public procurement. Please, next slide. Well, of course, you know Brazil. Brazil, it's a huge country. As you can see, it has a continental size. We are bigger than Europe. We are the 8th economy of the world, if you take in PPP in consideration, parity of purchase power. And we have 10% of the public procurement represent around 10% of our GDP. And this is a lot. If you take in consideration the size of Brazil and its GDP, you're going to see that 10%, it's a lot of money. I'm talking about the federal government, the state government, and the municipality, the cities. Brazil is a federation, so we have these three kinds of governments, okay? So it's around 10%, a little bit lower than OECD median, but we must remember that we are facing a huge fiscal crisis, so the public expenditure just drop a little bit, okay? And this, the first idea that I want to share with you is that since Brazil is so big, our problems are quite diverse and complex, and we have a lot of problems, a lot of challenges, societal challenges that we need to address. And one thing that is very funny that I learned from the book from Jared Diamond about the development of the nations. Brazil, it's funny to see that Brazil is one of the, I guess it's the only big country, huge country that has this north-south axis orientation. If you look at the Brazil map, you're going to see that we are oriented in terms of geographic position or in terms of space. We are oriented north-south. We have a north-south axis of orientation. This is different from United States, Europe, Australia, China, Russia. And this has a consequence because we have different climate. We have different kind of crops. We're different kind of colonization process because this kind of environmental issues makes the challenges very different. For instance, as if you see above the 10% slide, you have the Amazon. You have the number 10%. Above the 10% number, you have the Amazon. There is a very specific climate and very specific environment. And if you're going to look at just above Uruguay, the south part of Brazil, you're going to see that the climate and the environment is completely different. So the temperatures are different, the crops are different. So this brings us another element that you cannot find, for instance, in Europe, because the same country has totally different environmentals. And so this brings us another element in the challenge, societal challenge puzzle. Okay, so we have many diverse and complex social challenges. So this is a feature of Brazil. Of course, every big country as Brazil has a lot of problems, but here we have this kind of specific feature, this north-south axis orientation of the continent. Okay, next slide, please. Well, you know what is funny? Actually, it's not funny. It's sad, but you know, public procurement. It will be public procurement, the legal instrument that will take us out of this mess. I don't know if you know, but Brazil just bought the R&D effort to develop a vaccine from Oxford and AstraZeneca. Actually, what I meant to say is Brazil made a contract, a pre-commercial contract with AstraZeneca to develop the vaccine for COVID. So it is public procurement, the legal instrument that will take us out of this mess that we are facing right now. So this COVID crisis is showing us that public procurement is very powerful because it gives us the right instrument to tackle, to find a specific answer in a very short time. So the proof that public procurement works for our challenges are these: we are buying the vaccine for the COVID-19. Okay, so our Minister of Health just assigned this instrument. Is a pre-commercial instrument, and through this instrument we are going to receive the vaccine. You can say, oh, but this is obvious, and I'm saying no, this is not obvious. We could give scholarships, we could give grants, we could give direct investment, but we choose to do a pre-commercial procurement contract to access these vaccines. So this is just a glimpse of what I'm talking about, the power of public procurement. Brazil has a lot to learn in terms of public procurement as a technology and development problem solving. but we've improved a lot. We have interesting experiences and relevant concrete cases. In fact, the pre-commercial procurement that we call encomendas tecnológicas are the main instrument that we are using to transform the purchase power into innovation. So pre-commercial procurement is in full swing and is being used to purchase the R&D effort aimed to improve public service with the use with AI, water cleanup solutions, vaccines, and aerospace equipment. Our national regulation on PCP is based on Directive 40 from the European Union and United States Federal Acquisition Regulation, Part 35. So we have a very strong PCP legal instrument that is in full swing. Okay, but other instruments are not so well designed, and we are going to talk about that. We are facing major problems. For instance, to use grand prizes, to use competitive dialogues, and innovation purchasing itself. We have many problems to do this kind of, to use this kind of instrument. We're going to see why. But the first message that I want to share here is that we have a very good PCP legal instrument that is in full swing, and we are using a lot. Currently, we are doing this COVID-19 vaccine through a PCP instrument. Okay. The most relevant cases of PCP in Brazil are the COVID-19 vaccine, the KC-390 airplane, and the Sirius project. We're going to see all these three cases of PCP in Brazil. Please, no, keep this slide, sorry. So, like I told you, we just bought the R&D effort to develop the vaccine for COVID-19. And what is funny is, as expected, the negotiation process in this PCP for the vaccine was hard, with much information asymmetry, okay? And a lot of private power. I mean, this process was very, very difficult to conduct because every country in the world wants the vaccine. So it was a process with a lot of power asymmetry and a lot of private power, okay? But we managed it. In fact, we made a PCP with a total technology transfer. So we had this contract of PCP, but with this contract, we put a transfer technology contract. So we are receiving all the technology to produce this vaccine in Brazil. So actually, it's a very, very fancy PCP contract because we put together the PCP and the total technology transfer. At this moment, Fiocruz, that is the institution that is receiving this knowledge, is already receiving a lot of technology and will be able to produce the next vaccines for COVID. Okay. Well, the contract to the vaccine was relevant. The PCP contract was relevant because it was necessary not only to support the relevant research, but also to guarantee access to the first production. In other words, 2 minutes left? Jesus Christ! Really? 2 minutes left? Okay. But also to guarantee access to the first production. In other words, the place in the line of supply is associated with risk sharing in the R&D phase. I mean, who puts money in this phase? Who share risk with the suppliers will receive the first doses of the vaccine. So this is why it was so important to use PCP in this contract, not another regular contract. Well, next slide, please. This is the vaccine that will be produced by Fiocruz. Okay, was a PCP contract. Please, next slide. This is KC-309 project. This is an airplane from the Air Force. It's another PCP project. And please, next slide. And this is Sirius project. Sirius is a synchrotron light source, a particle accelerator that was also a PCP project, a PCP contract that we made in Brazil recently. Well, just to finish, I'm going to skip a lot of things. I'm sorry, I got lost in the time. Well, guys, the new Innovation Act that is from 2016 tries to spur innovation using public procurement, but the innovation law fails in it for five main reasons. Five main reasons I'm going to address very quickly. Okay, so we have this innovation law that allows us to do PCP. You saw some PCP experience, but this law falls in terms of using the whole scope of public procurement power in Brazil. First, the innovation law, it only works for a specific situation, PCP, procurement for innovation, for university, and etc. Second, many law operators in Brazil simply do not know about Innovation Act. They doesn't know. So it's so new and disruptive that they never saw it. They simply do not know that the law exists. Three, when people know about the law, they do know how to apply it. We have a problem with training and certification. The law is so new and so disruptive that people doesn't know how to apply it when they know. Four, we lack a specific accountability methodology. I'm talking about the Central Accountability Office doesn't know how to deal with uncertainty, with risk. And they try to put the perfect market competition elements in the accountability of something that is risky and uncertain. So we need to build a new methodology of accountability for science and technology. This is a major issue in Brazil. Okay. Five, and last, the business environment is so complicated. It's too complicated in Brazil. The Brazilian cost of innovation is too high. Therefore, the innovation is a process that is more a consequence of personal courage than an unexpected result of the system. I don't know if I was clear, but you must be, you as a public manager, you must have courage to apply innovation in Brazil. And last but not least, please, the final slide. Well, considering everything as it is, Brazil should explore the possibility through grant prices. Brazil should explore the grant prices. What are the grant prices? It's a price that you give after the delivery of an innovation. This grant prices strategy is the spearhead, in my opinion, my personal opinion, is the spearhead of innovation policies in Brazil. Should be the spearhead after the use of PCP. So we solve PCP, the pre-commercial procurement, and now we should explore the grant prices innovation. In the screen, you're seeing the first, maybe the first grand prizes made by Napoleon. The canned food was invented through a grand prize that Napoleon developed to feed its forces, its army, his army in the Napoleonic era. It was a grand prize, and now we have the canned industry because Napoleon made a grand prize to develop a food preservation process. So, my opinion, Brazil has already, I'm finishing. Brazil has already made a strong legal instrument that is PCP, and now with our limitations, we should explore grand prices. This is what I want to share with you, and thank you again. And I'm sorry for the bad management of time. Thank you.
No problem, thank you. I think there's a lot of interesting points in there, a few of which I'm sure we'll pick up on in a moment in the discussion. So I'll quickly move along to our next speaker, Sala Koivasalo, who is the lead Sustainable Development Advisor at Motiva in Finland, and is, I believe, involved with the Kino Competence Centre for Innovation in Public Procurement. Sally, I'll just ask you to try and keep to the 10-minute time if we can, just so we can get as much discussion in as possible.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon and good morning to some of you. Just a couple of words about the company I'm presenting here. Motiva is a government-owned company, and our mandate is to implement sustainable development agenda and government programs into public organization and municipalities, and also for the citizens and the companies. And in that mandate, we have the coordination, a role for the National Competence Center for Sustainable and Innovative Procurement. And I'm going to present about the work that the government of Finland is doing, and mainly about the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment of Finland. So next slide, please. Just to give you a picture about long-term program and policy work that we have been doing in Finland. So it's over a decade-long journey we have taken. The first national innovation strategy was written in 2008, and a lot of things have happened after that. And the main point here is that if you want to achieve results, you need to have systematic work and programs which are involved. And also think about that whose roles are to do different things. So you can see here there are national finance operators and other operators, national research centers, and mentioned also the Kino Competence Center. So there are different things that suit for different organizations to do and implement. So next, please. So Finland wants to be, our national sort of goal is to be a known forerunner in technological advances, innovative procurement, and in the culture of experimentation. And our government program we currently have is very ambitious about innovations, about sustainability. And there are these 5 main objectives and actions we have, which are mentioned here. So the first is about the amount of the innovation happening through the public procurement, which is now raised to 10%. It was last program's 5%. And second action is that we have this kind of joint objectives and concrete actions within between the ministries doing the cooperation. And third is that we want to address the social, climate and sustainability targets through public procurement. And we want to build up the skills on the contracting entities. And also we want to explore the ways how to spread the risk which is involved in the innovative procurement, e.g. by setting up and risk funds. But this is just started the work, the exploring thing. So next, please. So what we have learned about the key aspects for success, it's mainly about the multi-level governance between the central government and the municipalities. And if we are thinking about that, of course, we need to know where to address the things, where to do the cooperation. And we have found out that the theme areas to do the cooperation are the three. They are addressing the carbon neutrality, about the digitalization of public services and processes, and also how to utilize public data to improve all of these. There are a lot of national programs going on to utilize public data. Next, please. Okay, a few words about implementation and how to identify the areas to focus. Actually, in September, we had the first ever national program procurement strategy, and it really collects and combines all the public actors and government programs together, and it funnels the strategic goals for public procurement to implement these strategic goals. And we are sort of working through this joint program right now. And our competence center has been appointed one of the key implementation organizations doing the actual work. And if you are interested, you can find the action plan also in English in the ministry's site. So next, please. If you are thinking about implementation, we need different kind of issues to address. And there are mainly two types of issues. So promotive, innovative public procurement by developing cooperation, but we need, of course, structures and design usable and doable operating models. But also at the same time, we need to improve the actual procurement skills, the competencies, the know-how, the knowledge inside the public organization about the managing about the procurement tasks. Next, please. I'm gonna end my speech highlighting a couple of examples we are doing currently, to get you some idea about the practical level. So our competence center, we have started this kind of concept called Keino Academy, which is a 6-month-long development program. And we have had already 50 different public procurement units taking part of the development program. And then the idea is that we support their internal progress into implementing about different measures and means that we have made for them. Then we have a different kind of buyer groups in a different disciplines, like low carbon construction or transport services, for example. Then we have a lot of webinars about different aspects and issues. And then our, let's say, one of the most interesting things is that we have 15 regional change agents in all the areas in Finland, because we want to be sort of an hands-on in local public procurement units and the companies who are working directly with those. Because of course, Finland is not so big like Brazil, but still it is very different thing to do the purchasing in the metropolitan area in the Helsinki or in the Lapland. So it's one of the things that we have learned to be very practical and usable way to integrate the presence also in the other areas. So I think this is the main issues I wanted to say on behalf of Finland. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sally. That was really interesting. And again, I'm sure there's going to be quite a few questions around that. But in the interest of time, if we just hop straight on to Kevin. Kevin O'Malley is the Innovation Lead and SBRI Lead Customer for Clean Growth and Infrastructure at Innovate UK. Over to you.
Thank you. So let me just explain a little bit about what Innovate UK does for those who may not have come across us before, and then a little bit more about what my role there is. Innovate UK is the government's innovation agency, effectively responsible for growing the innovation sector. Within Innovate UK, I'm an innovation lead in the urban team, and that's about recognising the innovation potential of the complex problems that cities face. But also, I'm SBRI lead. SBRI is the Small Business Research Initiative, which is the UK's implementation of pre-commercial procurement. So I think perhaps some of the things that we've heard earlier on from André will link to what I'm about to discuss now. Can we move to the next slide? Oh,
I think you have control.
Yeah, I'm handling these slides, aren't I? There we go. Yes, we can move to the next slide. Just to give it a background, I was City Innovation Manager at a local authority at Bristol City Council in the UK for about 15 years. That was a role that evolved through a number of different iterations, but effectively I was responsible there for introducing new solutions to complex urban problems. And in that role, I recognised that the culture of local authorities, local government in the UK in particular, favoured established suppliers and well-tested solutions. And this was challenging to me, because I think what would have been much more interesting perhaps would have been to see more smaller businesses, more dynamic, agile, nimble, innovative businesses developing a commercial relationship with local authorities and being able to bring forward much more dynamic, cutting edge, bleeding edge in some cases, solutions that could be very effective in addressing some of these complex problems that we saw in cities. So when I left the City Council, I took with me this experience, and I moved to Innovate UK, who have the national remit in the UK to try and grow the innovation sector. And I made it my personal goal to try and push forward some some new approaches to unlocking that that urban innovation market in local authorities. And when I got to Innovate, I recognized that actually there was already quite a lot of activity that was going on around that, but it all happened internationally. Innovate UK supports what it calls global missions, where it takes SME innovators from the UK with really interesting ideas, and it introduces them to challenge owners in other countries. So whether that be the States or Australia or China, these UK businesses get to talk to those challenge owners about their problems and how that their technology might be able to address those problems. We call that program the Global Missions Program, and I thought we need something that we can deploy in the UK. So as a shorthand, I called it domestic missions, and I wanted to pilot domestic missions. And I recognized instantly that's a terrible name for a program of work, but I thought I'll use it temporarily, and we can develop something else later on. That's my first recommendation: is never use a temporary name for a program, because it'll just stick. And when it's an awful name like domestic missions, it will dog you for your entire program. So anyway, this got set off and established, and I thought I will pilot a set of experiments in order to explore what works around catalyzing this market for advanced urban services, for real innovation in city authorities. What support do city authorities need, and what support do innovators need in order to work together, in order to deploy these much more interesting, much more effective and much more efficient solutions. So the objectives that I came up with was principally to look at this matching the technologies that exist and their potential against city challenges, strategic city challenges. But in order to do that, I recognized that I would need to improve understanding within local authorities of what technologies are available, what the very edges of the technology envelope might be, because that's not necessarily always front and center to challenge owners' jobs. They don't perhaps stay abreast with all of the latest innovation. But also there's a big piece of work around helping businesses to better understand local authorities and how they operate. I thought one of the other key outputs and outcomes would be to try and draw together clusters of challenge owners, as I call them, people within local authorities who had shared issues, perhaps around homelessness or air quality, really big, meaty, shared problems, who could come together and define that problem, but also procure the solution collaboratively, creating a very significant market which would be very attractive to innovators. But also I saw that by bringing together these networks of innovators responding to these challenges, perhaps within that innovation community, there would be further innovation as perhaps people shared and enhanced their ideas, or even combined their ideas. So effectively, this was all about getting these SME UK businesses together, polishing their offer, presenting to local authorities, helping them to understand the challenges that local authorities have, in order to make a commercial relationship that would be useful to both parties. And the way that we intended to do that, to deliver that, was by running some workshops amongst the authorities to articulate the challenges in a way that people outside of a local authority would understand. So without using specific government words or vocabulary, And perhaps just to sort of break it down to something which is a little bit more granular, we worked on that challenge design process internally, and then we expressed those challenges to SMEs. So we worked on this program with just 5 cities, and we lined up the challenges as best we could, and then exposed them to SMEs and said, if you guys want to meet with somebody who has a real interest in solving a problem which we think your innovation might be able to resolve, put forward your case, talk about why you're the right people to meet these decision makers. We selected from a large group of SMEs who were interested in talking to decision makers and budget holders within local authorities to solve these problems. We selected the best, and of those, we took them into preparation phase so that they were better informed perhaps about how local authorities work, but also how they will respond best to an SME pitch. And the final element of the process was to bring people together in a physical space in order to have that sort of eyeball-to-eyeball connection, whereby challenge owners and innovators with solutions can really meet each other and build their understanding of one another's perspective, but also build trust. Unfortunately, the COVID outbreak curtailed our missions program. We managed to do one mission event in real life in Derry, and that was a huge success. But we had to take the rest of the mission events offline and online, sorry, and do them virtually. But I think also we learned a great deal about running virtual events of this sort. And as this was a pilot, this is exactly the sorts of things that we were interested to find out. And amongst other recommendations, the key elements I think that came through our independent evaluation report was that it's critical that whenever you're introducing innovators with solutions to local authorities, that you can see the strategic alignment of the solution that is being proposed to a challenge that exists somewhere within the authority. By taking these key strategic challenges which have been identified, you can be assured of 2 things. One, that there will be a budget available to solve it if it can be shown that the innovation is effective. And 2, that it will be of interest to senior political figures in the city, which I think is critically important in getting things done. Second thing I think was really apparent is that it's important to engage with existing networks and partnership. This is not a job of picking off individual cities and convincing them to buy more innovation. This is about creating networks of procurement of innovation. And those networks might already exist, but they're not intended for the procurement of innovation, but they could be pivoted to this or enhanced with that additional capability. One of the other elements which was quite difficult is that people who work within local authorities in the UK are very overburdened. They have an awful lot of work to be getting on with, and if this is just an additional role, that can be very challenging to them. So it was a real learning point to make sure that somebody has this as part of their job. It's their responsibility, and we need to find a way to resource that if we want to move forward this idea of local authorities procuring more innovation in a really effective way from SMEs. And there is a big job in making sure that local authorities understand the potential and range of relevant innovations. It's constantly changing. That's the nature of innovation. And there aren't people within authorities whose job relates to understanding what's coming next. So there needs to be that sort of organisations like the Catapult are invaluable in this, in helping to keep local authorities informed and abreast of the latest innovations and how they can transform and address their challenges. But also there's a big job in helping SMEs to understand what the opportunity is of working with local authorities, what the challenges of working with local authorities are, and how they can navigate the bureaucracy and still make a living. So that's a big piece of work, which again, I think organisations like the Catapult are ideally placed to undertake. The outcome of this pilot needed to be or needs to be the procurement of innovation at scale. And in order to see that happen, procurement teams need to be involved. So I think one of the things we learned is get them involved at the start. It's not just a conversation between challenge owners and innovators. It needs to have procurement teams in from the outset who are preparing to run that procurement at scale that will introduce this new technology rapidly to address a very complex problem. And I think one of the interesting opportunities that comes from this is to reframe the relationship as not as sometimes it feels like an oppositional relationship. It feels like somebody wins and somebody loses when an authority buys innovation. And I think there is an opportunity, especially working with SMEs who might be developing case studies or building their technologies, to make that relationship much more of a partnership. It's still a commercial relationship, but much more of a partnership where everyone can benefit. And the final element was that shared standards are really what are going to drive the uptake at scale of these innovations. And we should be baking that use of shared standards in from the outset. So thank you for your patience. I will stop my slides there.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kevin. That's really interesting as well. There's a lot of pieces to digest there. So we're just about to move into a slightly truncated discussion section. But before we do that, there's a very brief poll that, again, if you could just pop that up, that we wanted to ask, which is simply asking the question, from your perspective, whomever you may be, how well do you find that the current innovation procurement approaches that you deal with, they deliver the impact that you really want to see? So I can see the responses coming in there already. Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure there'll be more voting, but actually already the poll is pretty decisive. So, I mean, I deliberately asked this question to be slightly provocative, but the majority, the absolute majority of people say that their experience at the moment is that these processes work poorly, and there is a need for a fundamental change of how that dynamic works. So, I think that will lead into our discussion section. So, if the speakers can each rejoin and put their sound and video back on. So my first question to you all is simply off the back of that poll, which is so from the beginning of the other poll that we ran, we know that a substantial number of our audience are either from procurement departments or from suppliers, more than half of them certainly, and they're also telling us that current mechanisms don't work well for them. So firstly, does that chime with your experience, and what other comments would you have around that?
Can I take that one first?
Of course.
Thanks. Definitely chimes with my experience. When I worked in innovation in a city council, I found that it was very difficult for SMEs to respond to procurement opportunities, either because they were too complex or because they were too lengthy. And if you have a brilliant idea that will transform the world, you should be able to bid into procurement contracts. But unfortunately, I think they're just not fit for purpose. There are other instruments that will work significantly better, I think, in this space. Things such as SBRI, which creates an opportunity to share the risk between the public sector and the private sector in developing genuine innovation and new ways of addressing these hugely complex problems that, like homelessness, like air quality, as I've suggested, that just need to be cracked. So I think pre-commercial procurement, SBRI, that will definitely help if it's better deployed.
Any comments from the others?
May I continue? Yeah, I think there is a lack of competence on the buyer and seller side both. So in the companies and the public procurement units. So we need lots of training and other kind of support. And I think the most cheapest and easiest way to increase the innovations is to do market dialogue. Just simply talk, discuss with each other, all the ways you can do. Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, guys,
André?
just a quick thought. 3 points. First, we need to train better the buyer. This is a lack. I'm seeing this a lot in Brazil. We need to certificate the buyer to do a specific purchase. I don't know. For instance, purchase from the health, purchase from off-the-shelf products, and so on, so on. The second point is we should use more the grand prices for innovation because they are easier to execute than PCP or other kinds of procurement. So grand prices are easier, but it's not for all the situations. And thirdly, but last but not least, it is a complicated process. If you're trying to do real innovation, it is a complicated process. Our margin of operation is not so wild because the object is very complex. So sometimes we cannot do nothing about it because, I don't know, we are talking about nanotechnology or a solution with, I don't know, a lot of high technology. So sometimes it will be complex.
Understood, and I agree with that. It's got to be a sliding scale. I guess I would just pick up on one thing that you made a note earlier when you talked about grand prizes. There are certainly internationally examples where those have been incredibly impactful. You know, the original X Prize for space, the DARPA self-driving car challenge, for example. Those types of things have really changed industries and what's possible. But there are places where they were better and worse, and I wonder if the panelists had opinions on how they fitted in with the wider toolbox of approaches that are currently used.
This isn't an area I've got a great deal of experience, but I imagine that this relates to scale, and there are certain challenges that lend themselves to moonshot approaches and really radical, comprehensive competitions, and others which are a little bit more discreet and can be managed more simply through processes like SBRI.
This is a hard question for me to answer. I'm just trying to. I have no experience about the using the grand prizes, but I would say that building up sort of a bigger buyers network behind you, so it helps a lot, and also writing regional or national strategies. So what you are achieving as an nation or region or city region. It helps a lot to how you can discuss to the companies and how interested they are to start talking with you as an supplier. Yeah.
Okay, it's very helpful. I think so. I'm really unfortunately. I think we're gonna have time for one more question. Then I'm gonna have to close this off. I've noticed that there's a whole bunch of questions that have come through text. So in order to not lose that, I think I might circulate with some of these with the speaker afterwards, and we'll write them up and maybe I'll put them out on our blog site. So I think it's valuable to discuss. But one of the themes that came up from actually, I think every speaker today is about upskilling of the public bodies, both in terms of procurement, but also maybe in terms of the technology competency, perhaps. What have you found to be the most effective measures or processes to deal with that? Because it's a difficult, difficult area.
If I could, I'll jump in on this one. Yeah. In my old team at Bristol City Council, we had a mantra which was show them something. When you talk about complex technologies, it can be quite difficult if that's not your natural mindset to think about big data or to think about networks. But if you can make it tangible, if you can put something into a decision maker's hands and you can demonstrate and show them something, that can really change it for them. It can make it real. And that's all you have to do. Just show it's a tool and it's not something to be afraid of.
Get it in people's hands. Any other advice? André or Sally? Things that you've seen work?
Well, the reality in Brazil is a little bit different because our innovation system is still growing. It's not fully developed. So public procurement has two main results. First, the deliverable, the artifact, I don't know, the solution. And second, maybe the second part is more important than deliverable. It is the fuss that you make in the system. This is why I'm repeating myself talking about grand prizes in Brazil, because grand prizes has this possibility that makes a lot of fuss. Show to the system, to the SME, to the big companies that what the state wants. So do a lot of fuss, do a lot of noise in this phase of our innovation system is important. Do a lot of grand prizes, make people connected, make people talk about it, make people discuss, debate. This is important. So make a lot of fuss. It's a way to execute to use in a good way public procurement for innovation.
Sally, any comments?
Yeah, I agree with André, make a fuss, because I think one of the issues hindering about the innovations and the innovation public procurement is that there are so many sort of false things that people think that what you can do with the public procurement. So many people thinking that the law is hindering us doing this and this and that. And also there are so much negative media attention about the public procurement. And it also is something that it's not alluring for those quick innovative companies to be suppliers. And I think that's something we should address.
Well, that is definitely a good lesson, and I think that forms part of the Challenging Procurement program that we would like to, certainly within the UK, that we would like to create some of that noise and create some of that education of what's possible in the future. We're going to have to close up the discussion now. So I would take this point to thank each of our speakers. That's been really helpful. It's been really educational to see what each of you is doing. I am certain that there will be more questions. Some of the questions that came through from individuals in the text were looking for follow-on conversations or some specific questions about the processes mentioned. So as I said, we'll share those and see whether we can write something up. That'd be really powerful. For just for reference, there are a series of other upcoming events from CPC, which you can see here. The next